Hey there, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the DC Powerplay. I'm your host, Subir, and you can find me on Twitter at PleaseWinDC. I'm joined today by Amanda White. She's also on Twitter at AWhite7877. And just so you know, we do this podcast for one of the top sports websites in the district. It's called dmvsportsnetwork.com, and they can be followed on Twitter at DMV_SN. There's a lot of great daily content on there about all things DC sports as well as college sports as well. So please make sure to check that website out and subscribe to our show if you like it. Wherever podcasts are available, that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And we've also started putting these episodes on YouTube as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it and start with the 3-game recap for the Caps. It started last Friday on the island at the Islanders, which turned out to be a 3-1 victory for the Caps. This was a really important game that we looked forward to, and it kind of felt like a playoff atmosphere. It started with an Islanders goal that was kind of crazy because everyone thought it was offsides.
Because it wasn't a goal. That's why
it
it was
it
crazy.
literally should not have counted, and I was just thinking, if could you imagine if this was a playoff game and we couldn't challenge that and they counted it. But even the guy who scored, I think it was Konechny, or it might have been someone else. Oh no, Konechny plays for Philly, but whoever it was,
It was
uh,
Kunakal.
Kunakal. Okay, see, the names are pretty close, but yeah, so he like strolled in thinking it wouldn't even count, but he scored, and Islanders took a 1-0 lead. But Caps really, this was a game where sticking to the system, like this was that game where you could tell the Caps did not, become overly aggressive, taking ridiculous chances, trying to tie it up. They stuck with their system, and it was Vrana who tied the game up. And then Ovechkin eventually gets the game-winning goal on a really great kind of hand-eye coordination shot. Puck was like in the air, and he
Mm-hmm.
knocked it over the goalie's shoulder. That made it 2-1 before the Islanders scored an own goal when
That
they
was
were on the
awesome.
empty net. That was really funny, and Oshie gets credit for it because he was the last Cap to touch it. But really an unfortunate play if you're an Islanders fan. But those things can happen when you pull the goalie out, and that gave the Caps a 3-1 lead eventually. And again, I think the Caps played really, really strong in this game, especially defensively. And I'm glad that they were able to stick with the system and get the goal. What were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, this was a big game, and we're coming into it 2 points behind the Islanders, and so if we'd lost this game, we would have been 4 points behind, and at this point in the season, that's a lot to overcome for a team that's playing as well as they are. It's so remarkable to me what the Islanders have done under Trotz this year to see them go to make such a turnaround, and it's so frustrating to play against them because it's so familiar. You can see the Trotz system at work, and it's so suffocating,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really, if it weren't them we were fighting with for the division, then it would kind of make me happy to see Trotz doing so well up there. But things being how they are, I'm really glad they were able to pull out a victory here. That first goal was so frustrating. It was obviously offsides. Everybody knew it. It's why nobody was skating towards Kunakal. It's why he was barely moving when he got down there. It's why Holtby didn't really work to stop the goal. And the idea that they just let that stand was absurd. They really need to get that. They need to get that rule taken care of so that you don't see something like that in the playoffs. Um, Other takeaways, this was the game when Alex Ovechkin scored his 45th of the season,
Mm-hmm.
making him the only player in the history of the league to have 10 45-goal seasons, which is it's so you almost run out of superlatives to describe what Ovechkin does. And at this point in his career, it feels like every other game we're talking about some milestone that he's reached. And I always want to just shake people and say, don't be desensitized to this. You need to recognize how amazing this guy is and how unbelievable it is that we get to watch this all happen in real time. And this was another example of that. He's just having another incredible season. What else did I have? Dmitry Orlov, I wrote in all caps on my notes here. I just another ugly, ugly turnover that led to that. Um, that first goal, even though the goal shouldn't have counted. But still, it's just so many times that I say to myself, oh, look, there's another horrible turnover from Orlov. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's becoming a liability. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about Orlov at this point. It seems like nothing he does can get him benched or reduce time or anything. It doesn't seem like there are any consequences to these mental lapses that he has. And on the opposite side, there's Burakovsky, who had a good game and looks like a totally different player right now. I guess you have to threaten him or bench him to make him play well, but whatever it is, he's looking really, really good. Connolly also, who's having a great season. He took another penalty, so he is having a great season, but he's taken a lot of penalties in the past couple of months, which is very frustrating. He took another one. Luckily, this is one where the Caps played really good defense, including PK, but Connolly's continual taking of minor penalties is something they really need to address prior to the playoffs.
Yeah, and penalties overall has been a problem pretty much, because it's not just him, but Kuzi's taken a couple too many this year.
Yeah,
just guys you don't used to see take them are finding themselves in the box too much, and offensive zone penalties are the ones that really frustrate you the most. Sometimes there are good penalties, if you really stop a high scoring chance, but overall, Caps have been taking too many penalties. But
before we move on from this, one more thing I want to point out is, while that goal obviously shouldn't have counted, they gave up, Orlov had that bad turnover and they gave up this high danger chance. Fourth game straight that they gave up a goal in the first few minutes of the game. It's just every night that they play, you see that early goal and they're playing from behind all the time. And it's going to be a really big problem in the playoffs if they can't figure that out and make sure that they're not being so lackadaisical on defense early in games.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue, because their very next game at the New York Rangers, they gave up another really early goal.
Number 5 in a row.
Yeah, and same thing the last time they played the Rangers, they gave one up in 21 seconds. I don't think this one was as early, but it was still an early goal for the Rangers, and Caps had to play catch up. But thankfully, they were able to pull out the win there.
Yeah, this one was a full 45 seconds into the game, so they were definitely almost double the amount.
It's an improvement, yeah. No, but that game went to a shootout, which ended crazily. But before we get there, just some notes I have on that Rangers game was that Hagelin scored, so that was great. That tied the game at 1. So he gets his first as a Cap. And then Caps had 4 power play chances, but they went 0 for 4. So that was a bit frustrating against a weaker Rangers team. You expect the Caps to at least get 1 out of 4 when you get those chances. But like we said, it went to a shootout where it got to a point where Backstrom had to score for the Caps to stay alive, and he did. So that's just clutchness, from the cerebral number 19. And, we've seen it a bunch of times. And then we get Ovechkin's play, if you want to describe what happened on his shootout attempt.
Yeah, that was so fun. I mean, I remember sitting there after it happened and just going, wait, you can't do that. What do we So, he's coming in for his shot, and he's coming over to the right side of the cage, and the goalie he just throws the stick. He just throws the stick right at the puck, and it goes, kind of skating away. And then Ovechkin immediately says that's a goal, and he's talking to the refs, and the refs aren't calling it a goal,
and the commentators know it's a goal.
Right, everybody knows it's a goal, except apparently the refs, who should be the people who know. But it was a weird ending, but it did get credited as a goal to Ovechkin for the game winner. So all's well that ends well, I suppose.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think that the refs thought was that maybe Ovechkin knocked the stick out of the goalie's hands. But I mean, you got to think that they know that rule.
You certainly hope so.
Yeah, that's like the commentators even said. That's in the training videos, I think is what they said. So, Ovi would have scored if the guy didn't throw his stick. He deked him He
Yeah, and
beat him
he was
pretty
going to
well.
go right over him, you could tell.
Yeah, he had the whole right side of the cage open at that
Yeah.
point. Um,
Yeah, and I
but
had
yeah,
a couple of other notes on this one. Hagelin did get his first as a cap, but aside from goals, he has been what I've noticed since Hagelin's been with the team is just that I've noticed him all the time. He's just one of those. He's out there working really hard, and you notice him especially on the penalty kill. He's been really, really great, and it's funny to root for Hagelin because I've hated that guy when we played against him so many times. Like, damn it, Hagelin again. And it's really nice to see him doing so well with the team. Jensen too has been just a fantastic addition
yeah,
to the club. I mean, defensively, I haven't looked at let's just compare before and after because it's such a small sample size. I feel like it's too soon to do that, but it feels different. The defense feels different since they picked Jensen up at the deadline.
yeah, I agree. And uh, Burakovsky and Hagelin were actually swapped.
Yeah, so the third and fourth lines, which was
Yeah,
really interesting in this game, and Hagelin looks really good with Eller and Connolly. I like that combination a whole lot. I think that's probably what we're going to see going forward.
yeah. And how do you think Dowd and Boyd have been lately? Because, in my opinion, they played well like earlier on in the season, but I really haven't been impressed with them lately. And I'm just wondering if Reardon will call up Yaskin and try him on the fourth line with Burakovsky and someone, because we haven't
Yeah,
seen Yaskin in a
who
long time
who
either.
I don't remember. Is there some Yaskin? Who is that? No, I'm just kidding. We haven't seen him in so
Yeah.
long, but yeah, I'm not sure. Nick, I think Dowd and Boyd were better earlier in the year, but I also, I feel like all the tinkering with the fourth line has really been detrimental to all the players who've been playing on the fourth line. You've never given them a chance to get any chemistry going. It's almost every game, it's a different line. And I understand the frustration if they're not performing as well, but I feel like you have to have some patience and try to let them play together. So I think as we come down the home stretch of the season here, that Reardon needs to make a decision. And barring, really poor play or really egregious mistakes and that kind of thing, he needs to decide who's going to be the fourth line and have it be the fourth line.
Yeah, pretty much Yaskin and Stevenson have been the odd guys out. And, it may come down to when it comes to playoff time, just the matchups. If he thinks that Yaskin will be better against the opponent's fourth line, then he'll bring him up. Otherwise, I think we'll stick with Burakovsky, Dowd, and Boyd. But that'll definitely be something to look out for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. It's kind of the only unsettled position. The other thing I'm really not liking, I love the addition of Jensen, but I don't love the subtraction of Juice.
Right.
We haven't really seen him since Jensen started playing regularly, and
Yeah.
and we all love Orpik. Let me make all the you know things everybody needs to say about Brooks Orpik, but I don't know that Orpik and Jensen is better option than Juice and Jensen. I'd really like to see Juice and Jensen get some time playing together before the playoffs start.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Caps fans love Juice, and he's played well whenever he's in, and I think he's a better puck mover than Orpik is. It's just I think the coaching staff has some type of loyalty to Orpik because they realize what he adds, whether it's in the locker room or on the ice, his leadership and just experience. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
we'll see
get
what
all of
happens.
that, but
Yeah.
I feel the same way like I did about Jason Worth in the playoffs 2 years ago. Is like I get that he's the veteran and he's beloved in the locker room, and that's all great and everything.
Yeah,
But
it comes down to
play who's
yeah.
going to give you the best chance to win.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. So yeah, I think that's like the one thing Caps fans really want to see Christian Juice back out there, but we'll have to wait and see. I would assume he gets a sweater before the regular season is up, but there's no telling really.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on then to the final game of the week was at Philly. This was a 5-3 victory for the Caps. We really started out with a 5-0 lead for the Caps. It was just an offensive explosion. I would have liked somewhat of a stronger finish just because you don't want to give up 3 unanswered, and Philly was really threatening for a fourth at some at some times.
Yeah.
But I will say that the timeout that Todd Reardon took after 5-3 was really important because there was still like 10 minutes left in the third. And, usually when we see a timeout, it's really towards the end of the game. But this was a perfect timing.
Yeah, they needed to slow the game down.
Yeah.
It was starting to get out of hand, and they needed to.
Yeah, he talked him up, and it was like one of the better coaching moments we've seen from Todd. Because after that timeout, Caps didn't give up another goal. So that was really important and good to see. Jensen got his first point as a Cap. It was an assist. So finally, both him and Hagelin are now on the score sheets. And Jensen played really good defense as well. It's not just like his offensive capabilities, but there were instances where I saw him in our zone doing a really good job, like beating guys to the puck and getting it around the boards and all that, using his body and all that. So it was good to see kind of an all-round game from him. One stat was the face-offs. Honestly,
this was 70% putrid in this game.
70% Phillies way, and I mean we still kind of blow them out, but that's really bad face-off percentage.
It's really bad. And what's interesting to me is I've seen a lot of people arguing on kind of Caps Twitter that obviously there's not that much correlation between face-off winning and general scoring or winning percentage as far as just winning games, and that may or may not be true. But all I can think of is if they're able to do what they're doing with such an awful face-off percentage, like get the face-off stuff right, and you're going to be doing better. You're going to win more games. You're going to give yourself a better chance to win. And when you get into the playoffs, there are no easy games. There are no easy opponents, and they really can't keep being even below 50% is not okay, and being at 30% is just, I have no words. That's just awful. There's no way that a team who's fighting for the top of the Metro Division that's as tight as this one is can be satisfied with that kind of face-off win percentage number.
Yeah, it's certainly going to cost you. When you play Pittsburgh or something in the playoffs, it's a tie game in the third. If you ice the puck twice and you still can't win a face-off, they're going to make you pay. I mean, your guys are just going to be too tired, and, teams are just too good, with plays off of winning a face-off. So, I mean, I don't know what more they can do. I mean, it's not like the guys don't know how to take face-offs, Kuzi, Backstrom, the centers, but they're just not winning a lot of them. But
yeah, I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know why it's so much worse this year. I mean, the obvious answer is, they lost Jay Beagle, who was kind of a face-off specialist, but, he wasn't taking all the face-offs. It's not like he alone is accounting for the difference here. I don't know what changed from last year to this year, but they need to figure it out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. Just some other notes on the Philly game, like positive notes. The first goal, Ovi to Wilson, that was just beautiful.
Oh,
that's got to be one
from the knees. That's one of those that's going to go in the highlight reel for Ovechkin goals. Like that, when we do the looking back over his career, that's going to be in the list.
That's going to be one of his top assists. I mean, he's had a lot because he's an underrated
passer.
Yeah, but I just love that play. And for Wilson to score on the road, just shut all those fans up. And Ovi looked good doing it. I can't get enough.
And that was 19 for Wilson in 43 games. That is so absurd. People keep saying, oh, it's 19 on the season. He's having a career high. Yes, that's true. But you need to remember that he didn't play for the first 16 games. And then he had the concussion and missed more time. So, I mean, he hasn't played anywhere close to the full season, and he's got 19 goals. It's crazy what a career season he's having.
Yeah, if he didn't miss all that time, he'd probably have at least four more goals, I'd say.
I bet it'd be more than that. I bet it'd be more like 8 or 9 more.
Wow, yeah. That was conservative. But, he'd be 20 plus, closer to 25 goals already, which would be just amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then, there were some other good, nice goals that the Caps scored. Ovi gets a power play goal. I think Backstrom, chipped in one.
And Connolly with the I didn't know I scored goal. That one was fun.
Oh, yeah. That was a sick shot. That was so nice.
It was so fast. I didn't even realize either. Neither did Connolly. Nobody did.
Yeah, so I guess what they did was after the commercial, they called it a goal. And then did they add the time back into the game? I think is what they had to
Yeah,
do,
I
like
think that's
over a
what they had
minute
to
of
do.
time. Yeah.
It was a weird one. It was the weirdest clock stuff since Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final last year.
Oh my God. Yeah, that
I
was
still think that
conspiracy.
was the weirdest thing I've ever. I am fully on board with the conspiracy
Yeah,
theories
me
on
too.
that. I'm just
Me too. What was it like? The clock it disappeared, right?
It just disappeared. It just
God.
disappeared. And then when they turned it back on, it was clearly wrong. It was
Oh my God.
bizarre. It was the weirdest thing. And I don't know.
I
I've watched a lot of hockey games. I've never seen the clock just stop, like literally disappear off the screen.
Yeah, I remember because I watched it at the viewing party in DC outside of Capital One, and
That's where I was too.
oh, couldn't find you in that sea of red or sea of just
Yeah, there were a few people there. It would have been
yeah,
hard to
just a
find
few.
anybody.
Yeah, just a few. But yeah, like everyone there was like, "What's going on?"
Oh, it was crazy. I was there with my husband and my two sons, my teenagers. And we all were down there and everybody starts screaming, "What is going
Hmm.
on?"
It was funny because Caps became the first team to win a cup, winning every series on the road. But I was
Yes, and
just
neat
thinking
stat.
today, yeah, they got a repeat, but this time do the opposite. So you give the fans, something to really like love.
I know
Just
it's true.
just
It did make it
imagine.
hard. Every single one on
Oh,
the road. Although I have to say, obviously, nothing will top the winning the cup.
right.
But that game against the game 6 against Pittsburgh was, I don't know. That to me was the moment that I will never forget. We were just all of us in my living room screaming and jumping up and down. That was awesome.
Yep, just really good times, and I hope we can enjoy them again this playoffs. But anyway, so that was the 3-game recap. Basically, weird goals in each game, weird ref calls or
Hmm.
non-calls in each game.
Oh, we should have mentioned Braden Holtby in this game.
That's
Got
right.
his 250th career win, becoming the second fastest goalie to reach that mark in 409 games, which, the thing that was interesting to me, everybody heard that, but I saw in an article later, and I made a note of to share here tonight, is there are only 55 goalies in the history of the league that have reached 250 wins. So out of 55 people who've ever done it, Holtby was the second fastest. It's really a remarkable accomplishment.
It really is, and that day and night was all about Holtby because I know you read the article that he wrote in the Players
Yes,
Tribune.
that was
It
fantastic.
was if you're listening right now and you haven't read Holtby's piece that he wrote in the is that ESPN?
It was the Players Tribune.
The Players Tribune, where basically the players write an article. It's like their own words, their own writing. He talks about kind of growing up on a farm. He has 900 cows. The teams he played for used to get blown out when he was a kid, but then he moved and I guess started playing
Yeah,
in
that
better
is such a
leagues.
cool story. And the best part of it is about the celebration after the cup win last summer and about Verona having to have everyone take turns holding his hand while he got
Right.
his first tattoo. It's good stuff. If you haven't read it yet and you're listening, go out and find it. It's worth your time.
Yeah, if you want to hear about how the Caps played Mario Kart and they messed around, Beagle was really good at Mario Kart and Oshie ended up getting a Wario tattoo because he swore that he would if they won the cup. And also, but beside that, I think another really great part was him kind of looking back at that Columbus series and just how things could have gone either way and just his approach to goaltending and staying calm and it just makes me love him even more than I
Me
already
too.
did,
It's a remarkably good article. It really is worth the time to go find it and read. It's long, but it's worth the read.
Yeah, and it's an easy read and it's just so interesting. And you just love to hear, players that you watch, kind of what goes through their head, especially Holtby, who's like known as such a cerebral, nice guy. Um, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So good for Holtby for getting the record.
Yeah, and while we're suggesting reading material for listeners, Isabel Gershudian in the Post had a really great article about Hagelin and Jensen and how they're adjusting to and fitting in with the team. That's another one that's really worth your time. It's behind the paywall, so if you don't
Okay.
have a Washington Post subscription, you won't be able to get it. But it's stuff. If you do, go out and find it because it really is worth it.
That's interesting. I know like the guys have been really nice to Hagelin and Jensen, making them feel welcome right away. But yeah, it'd be nice to hear just from their own words how it's been.
Did you see that video? I guess it was 3 or 4 days ago now of Tom Wilson and Carl Hagelin with their new little
Oh
saxophone
yeah,
playing.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I saw a lot of very salty Pittsburgh fans
Yeah.
on Twitter about that. And this is a good time to remind all of you nice listeners that Hagelin is being paid currently by the Penguins to play for us, and that makes me so happy every time I see him play. Yeah. They're still covering part of his salary this year
Right.
from this trade. So
Yeah.
yeah, that thrills me every time. Like nothing makes me happier than making the Penguins sad. So
Yeah, and if Hagelin produces when we play the Penguins, it would just be even sweeter.
oh yeah.
Yep.
Or if they miss the playoffs, I desperately want them to miss the playoffs because that segues beautifully into our next segment about playoff matchups.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what team we prefer the Caps to play. But before we do that, I just want to remind the listeners of DMV Sports Network's library podcast. We have podcasts on a bunch of different shows, including Redskins, Capitals, Nationals, Wizards, and Ravens, as well as Fantasy Fever, which is for football. And then we have 2 mixed bag shows. It's called It's About Time DC and the Dom and Thunder Show. So please check those out as well. The DMV Sports Network just continues to put in a lot of work for you listeners and all things DC sports. So yeah, Amanda, let's talk about currently the Caps would be playing the Penguins in the first round.
No.
While we got past them last year and we should no longer be scared of them, that is still not a matchup I want to see in the first round. Especially since Penguins have started picking up their play just as the Caps have. That is not the team that I necessarily want to see the Caps play in the first round. Do you have any team or matchup that you think the Caps would have the best or easiest time with? Nothing's easy, but the easiest.
It's like you said, nothing's easy. If I had to pick a team that's currently in playoff contention, I'd go with Montreal.
Okay.
Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I know I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize to everyone. So, I think the Penguins probably are the weakest team, but there's just so much history there that I'm not interested in seeing them in the first round because they've knocked us out so many times, and I would just getting knocked out by them again would be awful, but especially in the first round, I don't think I could take it.
Yeah, I mean, if the choices are pretty much between Pittsburgh, Montreal, Columbus, or Carolina, because Carolina is currently third in the Metro, but they could very easily get moved down, if Pittsburgh moves into third. There is no easy match, but I would take Carolina.
Yeah, that would be my next one after Montreal if I had to pick.
Yeah. Carolina's a pretty well-rounded team, and I think they have one of the longest playoff droughts in the league. But, I wouldn't really want to play the Islanders just because I think the Trotz factor and how the Islanders have the capability to, suffocate you on defense.
Yeah.
But, you can't pick all, and there's no really, tanking for a spot to get your favorite matchup, so...
No, there's especially not in the Metro right now.
No,
you could find yourself out of it very quickly in the Eastern Conference. There's not very many points separating the top of the conference and not in playoff contention.
Exactly.
So you need to be really careful and get these wins down the stretch. But it would be from a pure entertainment hockey fan standpoint. Islanders Caps would be a spectacularly good matchup. The teams play a very similar style. They're both really good. They're battling for the top of the Metro. I mean, it would be a really good series, but I don't know that I would like to see it. I certainly wouldn't like to see it early in the playoffs.
And it would be yeah. I mean, you're right, but then you look on it on the flip side. These teams don't necessarily want to play the Caps.
That's true.
Defending champs who finally got over the hump, a healthy team. Knock on wood, and the team that's starting to figure it out. We didn't exactly touch on this, but during the 5-game win streak that the Caps are on right now, they've played really well defensively overall. They haven't been giving up as many goals as they were previously. And you just kind of see it starting to round into shape, that defensive system, their exits of the zone, the way they're kind of, Holtby's playing a lot better. So right now, I think the Caps are playing almost to their playoff level.
Yeah, I feel like they're getting into
they're ramping up.
playoff mode activated, as they say, I guess. But yeah, I think that Holtby, I wonder actually if that eye injury that Holtby had earlier in the season didn't linger longer than we all knew about, because he really didn't seem like himself for quite a while afterwards. He is seeming better now. The defense is much improved. I think that's the biggest difference that we've seen on this win streak. It's the first win streak they've really had since that long. They went 7, right, earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And other than that, they've been really up and down. They really haven't gotten on a consistent win streak since then. And they had that really long losing streak going into the All-Star break. But, I think Jensen's made an enormous difference. And, Hagelin taking one of those forward spots, also he plays much better defense, than we were seeing from a lot of the forwards before. So I think those two guys have been a massive upgrade for the team, and probably are the biggest difference that we're seeing right now in this win streak since they joined the club.
Yeah, no doubt. We love those pickups for the Caps. They fit right in. And like you said, the defensive responsibility is high on their priority for both those guys. So, Caps aren't giving up 4 or 5 goals anymore. If you think about the Islanders game, that was really like a shutout because their first goal shouldn't have counted.
Exactly. And it kind of pissed me off on Holtby's behalf, because that should have been a shutout for him in his 250th win, and it wasn't.
Yeah. So, we hope they keep it going. The Caps' next 4 games, they'll play 4 games before the next time we record. It'll be at home against the Devils on Friday night. Then they will host the Winnipeg Jets. That'll be a really interesting game, a tough Western team.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the matchup at Pittsburgh is on a Tuesday night, and then at Flyers again. So, when we made the prediction last podcast about the 3 games, I think we all kind of said 2-1.
We did, and they went 3-0 instead.
Yeah. So now, what would you say in the next 4 games?
I'm going 3-1. I think they lose to Winnipeg.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much fair. I think they go 3-0-1, and they either lose to the Jets in overtime or Pittsburgh in overtime. But they should handle the Devils for sure.
Yeah, the Devils and the Flyers, they should win those games. I think Pittsburgh, the thing about Pittsburgh in the first round that makes me nervous isn't that they're a better team than us this year. They're not. But it reminds me of I've grown up a Redskins fan, and I always felt like Redskins Dallas was this huge rivalry, and it never really mattered which team was better. Any given game, one of the teams could win. It just didn't matter who should win. And that's kind of how I feel about Pittsburgh. Like, it doesn't really matter who should win. Like, anything can happen in those series because they're so emotional, and they're so, I think that's how the Pittsburgh game will be. It might be that the Caps are, atop the Metro, and the Penguins are fighting for the second playoff spot. Doesn't mean that they can't beat us.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I think what we want is, if the Penguins make the playoffs, can they just be wild card 2, so they have to play the Lightning first round?
Right, because then we won't see them.
Yeah. Dude, but that would still be, I think, a really great series, but Lightning would be heavily favored there, I think.
Yeah, and the Lightning are obviously the juggernaut going into the playoffs here, but they remind me a lot of these Caps, President's Trophy winning Caps teams that went out in the second round. I don't know that going into the playoffs on cruise control is actually all that beneficial.
I know. I mean, we've experienced it, but
yes, we certainly have.
They didn't win the President's Trophy last year. I think that was Nashville, who was out in the second round. But they were still first in the East, and obviously Caps were able to overcome that team. But Lightning, I think, will be the favorite to come out of the East. I think when it's all said and done before the playoffs start. But again, it's all about matchups, who you play, where the puck bounces.
It is, and that Lightning series last year, went 7. It was the only game in the playoff run that went 7 for the Caps. And that they were an immensely good team last year, and they're better this year. So I mean, they're going to be a really tough out in the playoffs, but I think the Caps can do it. They just need to get there. So
Yep.
they're not going to be playing the Lightning early in the playoffs if they play them at all. So
Yeah, I think they should go. Man, I wish one day they would switch the playoff format and just go
God, I hate the
one
playoff
through
format.
8.
Yep.
You know, pretty much like basketball. Just do it like that.
Yeah, I would love that. I hate the way that you see some of those 2 years that the Penguins won the cup. The Caps were the President's Trophy winners, and they should have been further into they should have been further in. You're taking the best matchup and putting it in the second round, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, those 2 years, Penguins and Caps should have been the conference finals both times.
Yeah,
not
agreed.
Second round. And that's like better for hockey, for fans in hockey anyway.
Yeah.
But 2 best players, Ovi and Sid, going, to go to the finals. But that's, people have been asking for that for a while, and Gary Bettman has not really moved on that.
No, well, maybe he will. We'll see.
We'll see. But beside that, I think we covered a lot of good topics, Amanda. That'll do it for us here. Thanks for listening in, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show, and please subscribe to us wherever podcasts are available, and leave any feedback or likes or comments on Twitter as well. Don't forget to check out dmvsportsnetwork.com and follow them on Twitter at dmv_SN. And if you want to join the DMV team, please leave them a direct message. I know they're looking for writers and sometimes guests on podcasts as well. So thanks again for listening, everyone. Amanda, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Go Caps.
See ya.